This video is brought to you by the Great Courses Plus. More about that later. Now I know what you're thinking. China Part 3? Blue, come on, we've been over this so many times already. We all know it's just gonna fall apart again. But what if I told you that in this video, it only collapses once? I know, that's a hefty swerve from the way things have been going so far, but the neat thing about late dynastic China is that it stays in one piece for like 700 straight years. Is that a new record? Guys, that's a new record! Yay, China! You did it! So we got a lot of China to get through in not a lot of time, so to figure out how the last dynasties kept it together, for better and for worse, let's do some history. Step 1 is the Mongols, who swept in from the north to conquer the Qin dynasty at the start of the 1200s and then the lower Song dynasty in the latter part of the century. I've talked about the Mongols elsewhere, but to briefly recap, small tribes become big empire and split into 4 khanates. Kublai Khan's Yuan Dynasty became the hot new empire in charge of China, while the rest of the Mongol Empire fell to the 3 other grandsons of the big Genghis. And Kublai wasted no time in harnessing a freshly conquered Asia to kickstart a new great era for the Silk Road. The 4 khanates worked together to transport goods and ideas between East and West for the first time in several centuries. Trade prosperity helped Kublai amass great prestige and treasure for the Yuan Dynasty, and his newly constructed capital in Beijing became legendary in part thanks to the good press from outside visitors like Marco Polo. A lot of what we know about the Yuan Dynasty comes from the Polo's journals, written after spending 17 years working in Kublai's court. It detailed Chinese geography and the extensive canals, the bureaucratic system of governments, social welfare programs, and immense riches that were first regarded with skepticism, but a solid proportion of it has since been corroborated. One thing he noted was that while Kublai knew his Chinese culture inside and out, he and all the other Mongols were still fundamentally outsiders, and much of the ethnic Han Chinese population really didn't like this Khan dude rolling in and opening up their civilization to so many foreigners. You know, they really should have built oh, right, that one didn't work at all, did it? Ooh, righty. Okay, moving on. The Yuan Dynasty had other problems too. For one, the bureaucrats that Kublai imported to govern weren't all up to the task of managing such a large empire. They also accidentally destroyed their currency, but explaining monetary policy is kind of a nightmare, so the point is, maybe not a surprise in retrospect, but running an empire with the horsey, shooty guys who are primarily famous for destroying empires is a fundamentally risky play. Political infighting also plagued the latter half of the dynasty, so for all it did along the Silk Road to bring Europe closer to Asia, it couldn't save itself from a nationalist rebellion that overthrew the Yuan Dynasty and founded the Ming Dynasty in 1368. They and their successors, the Qing Dynasty, have a mixed reputation depending on who you ask. On the upside, the Ming did 3 huge things. They stabilized China and held down the fort for 300 peaceful years, they got stupid rich in the process, and they pulled off one of the biggest cultural preservation programs in history. But it came at the substantial cost of a vastly diminished outside influence on the world around them, which would have catastrophic consequences down the line. And also, the first Ming Emperor was a bloodthirsty tyrant who killed for sport. Pros and cons. Step 1 for the Ming's revitalization of Chinese culture was reinstating the Confucian civil service examination, which the Mongols had axed a century earlier. The test guaranteed that only the best scholars worked as bureaucrats, but also ensured that the government ran on a firm Confucian foundation by testing students on history, philosophy, and composition skills. The tests were grueling even for the students that could afford the best tutors, because proctors literally threw you in a locked room for 3 days while you wrote the test. You know it's legit when modern college admissions look like absolute weak sauce by comparison. With so much attention placed on this exam by families, schools, and government, it's no surprise that Ming China had arguably the best educated populace in history up to that point. Step 2 of the Ming Dynasty Goes Hard took them out to sea, as Emperor Yongle charged a Muslim eunuch named Zheng He to go on a series of naval expeditions across Southeast Asia. With a fleet of inconceivably massive ships, Zheng He traded goods, acquired treasure, and told everybody he came across how positively dope the Ming Dynasty was. A century before Vasco da Gama reached India, Zheng He was bouncing around East Asia and the Indian Ocean, spreading Chinese culture like a personal single-fleet Silk Road. I can't even begin to talk about just how cool Zheng He is without derailing this entire video. Annoyingly, the voyages were stopped for a few reasons soon after Emperor Yongle died, and as far as I'm concerned, it's everybody's loss. Resources had to be diverted towards refurbishing the Great Wall to keep the Mongols from coming back since the Ming army had become laughably ineffective. So the Great Wall that you see today is the Ming Wall, and it looks cool, it's got a bunch of pretty watchtowers, and most importantly, it's, you know, not broken in the middle of it like the old wall was. Whoops. but as we'll see in a little bit, it still only vaguely helped. Between axing the naval expeditions and doubling down on the wall, the mid-1400s is where the Ming's conservatism came to bite them in the collective butt. While they did preserve Chinese culture for centuries of peace, they completely abdicated China's historical role as a cultural trendsetter and technological innovator right when European powers were getting ready to flex on the entire globe. But this isn't just a dramatic alas for the history that could have been, this also caused, real problems that led to the collapse of the Ming Empire. Big oof. By the mid-1500s, the Ming's retirement from international affairs turned into full-on political frailty. As corrupt officials did whatever they wanted, the army was useless against northern invaders, and the navy was useless against pirates in the 1500s, they couldn't organize famine relief in the early 1600s, and the emperors lived completely oblivious to everything going on outside of the Forbidden City in Beijing. You know how the Earth King from Avatar went his entire life without even leaving his palace and seeing the city of Ba Sing Se that he lives in? Yeah, this is where that trope comes from. By now, yeah, China wasn't actively civil warring for centuries, but also no one was shocked when the Manchu invaders from the north swept in and conquered the Ming Dynasty in 1644. The government was so useless that it didn't even know it was getting invaded until the army showed up in Beijing. And let me tell you, that is a terrible surprise to wake up to in the morning. And this takes us to the Qing Dynasty, who, for reasons that will become painfully clear in a few minutes, is the last dynasty in Chinese history. But first, let's talk about the not empire-crushing stuff, because in the 16 and 1700s, things were actually going really well. Although the Manchu rulers were foreigners, they kept Confucianism as the philosophy of state, and continued promoting Chinese culture. Maybe unsurprising, but the early emperors were also very skilled conquerors. Kangxi nearly doubled the size of the empire, and Shanlong pushed considerably further west during his more than 6-decade-long reign. That's impressive. However, all of their conquering may have slightly bankrupted and broke the military, but right now it's fine. The 1700s were extremely kind to the Qing, as they collected antiquities and amassed enough revenue to completely cancel yearly taxes on 4 separate occasions. At that point, you might as well be actually growing money on trees. And speaking of growing, peace and prosperity helped China's population to more than double during the 1700s. I tell you, if you've been around the block on this channel, you've seen a lot worse than that. But now that we've gotten a good century under our belts, let's see just how badly everything is going to fall apart. To that end, I present to you how to ruin your civilization in 5 easy steps. Step 1. Actually governing your empire is for boring nerds. So, do literally anything else. Wine, women, anything but work. Step 2. You know the new agricultural goods you import in order to keep pace with your wildly expanding population? You don't need them. Confine the Portuguese to Macau and stick the Brits in Canton? Foreigners are weird and you don't want them gumming up your nice empire. Just be sure to ignore the fact that the Qing ruling class is entirely composed of non-Chinese Manchurians and it'll work out great. Step 3. You see those tiny European nations building global mercantile superpowers? Dumb! The world is too big and change is scary, so stick your head in the dirt and ignore everything from the outside world. Yeah, you could be out there gallivanting across the seas to share goods, culture, and ideas, making everybody better off in the process and increasing your own prestige and well-being, but that's, effort. No. See step 1. Gross. Step 4. Antagonize the British Empire. You can take them. Actually, just exist in the 1800s and be non-Britain, and then Britain will just make your life hell anyway. How could they do that, you ask? Buckle up. Say, for instance, that you're running a huge trade surplus with the outside world and Britain would do anything to sell you stuff, including and not limited to growing opium in India and exporting it illegally to China in shockingly large quantities, going from about 700 tons of opium in 1820 to over triple that 15 years later. Then, after failing to address the problem for multiple decades, confiscate all of the opium, imprison British merchants, and form a blockade of the port of Canton, then, you get war declared on you. Twice. Britain will probably bring in an armada and wreak havoc up and down the Yangtze River until you surrender, at which point they'll force you into an extremely humiliating treaty, ceding the island of Hong Kong, opening more ports, paying war reparations, and waiving all of Britain's import taxes. Yikes. Rinse and repeat, except this time add France and America to the mix and become helpless to every major foreign power carving up your empire and hijacking your economy. So, that would be how Britain could make your life hell in the 1800s. Step 5! No matter how bad things look, make sure to resist every conceivable opportunity to actually fix your problems until it is absolutely too late. When, for instance, revolutionary school teachers call for modernizing reforms and then incite the 14-year-long Taiping Rebellion in 1850, just ignore all of their suggestions. You don't need them. You're doing great. Don't mind that the rebellion decimated the agriculture of the Yangtze River Basin and now you have no way to feed your massive population. That's a them problem. Even when parts of your government do start reforming, cripple them at every point in the process. Are they trying to industrialize? Great, embezzle the money to make a new boat for your palace. Problem solved. Better yet, start your own rebellion against foreign influence and storm all of the foreign embassies in Beijing. It doesn't matter that your revolutionaries are primarily martial artists and the foreigners have guns. Details. Then after that, you too can be on your way to foreign exploitation and imperial atrophy. Hey, wait a minute, that's a bad. So that's basically how to ruin your empire in 5 easy steps. It's really amazing what you can do when you stick your head in the sand and ignore all of your problems. Anyway, towards the end, China looks a lot like Ottoman history, where major European powers, and also in this case Japan, dug their claws in, dismantling the empire piece by piece. In 1912, the 6-year-old Emperor Puyi abdicated the throne, bringing 4,000 years of dynastic rule to an end, and an entirely new conflict for dominion of China began in earnest. What happens next is that the Republic. In conclusion, leave Winnie the Pooh alone. Sorry, got sidetracked there. In any case, that's the history of late dynastic China. As I've argued before with the Ottomans, I don't like calling stagnation onto a period in history as some justification for outright dismissing it. We often look at what isn't or what could have been, but history is fickle, so it pays to also reflect on what still is. But beyond that, I'd say the takeaway here is that there's a balance to be struck with which way you face. If you look outwards, there's a promise of influence, power, and a chance to connect the world, but you risk losing your own identity if you prioritize productivity over culture. By contrast, facing inward like the latter Ming and the Qing allows a society to live largely peacefully and in accordance with ancient customs, but clinging to the past suffocates innovation, and history will steamroll you without mercy. To put it another way, there are advantages to both, but whichever way you push, be careful that you don't push too hard. History likes to push back. The scourge of finals week is upon many of us, and in this dark, dark time, I want you to know about our sponsor, The Great Courses Plus. It's essentially a Netflix for college classes, bringing together some of the world's best professors to provide you with on-demand access to a library of over 11,000 lectures on a massive range of topics. From the history and literature that we already know you enjoy to topics in science, math, travel, and cooking, and an honestly astounding amount more. If, say, you wanted to learn more about China, you can check out this lecture about the great treasure fleets of the Ming to learn all about my boy Zheng Ha, as well as other insightful lectures from the Foundations of Eastern Civilization series, which was super helpful to me while researching this video. Whether you want to jump into a brand new topic or are looking to do some review, there's a lot to enjoy and benefit from with the Great Courses Plus. And you can get started right now for free by going to thegreatcoursesplus.com/overlysarcastic to start your 30-day risk-free trial. Back in middle school and high school, whenever little baby Blue was having trouble with a class, whether it was math or history or whatever, my dad would just order a DVD off of the Great Courses and then we'd sit down and watch it together to learn about the material. It was always super helpful and I really enjoyed doing it, and now this process is even more streamlined and accessible. So if you've got a test coming up on a topic that you're maybe not feeling confident about, I really encourage you to head over to their website, link in the description, and watch a lecture or two with your free trial. I genuinely believe you'll be able to do yourself a solid with the resources this website has available to you. Again, that's thegreatcoursesplus.com/overlysarcastic, and for real, good luck on those finals, guys. You can do it. Thanks so much for watching. This China series was a lot of fun to work on these past few months, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Big and faraway topics like this can be pretty scary to just jump into, but I'm looking forward to taking more swings at history that's, well, not just the Mediterranean. What? I know what I like. Sue me. Next video from me will be something that's not strictly educational, but still historical and definitely fun. I'll see you then.